I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. On recent shows, we've predicted the playoff teams, the rookies of the year, the most valuable players, the most improved, and the most disappointing teams. But what about the coach of the year now, Tom? What do you think?
You could darn near mention everybody in football. You'd have to talk about Don Shula. It's hard to get a team to repeat or come close, and he's done that with Miami.
And in that same conference, you'd have to consider Lou Saban, I think, in his 9-5 job at Buffalo.
Yeah, they were more than just O.J. They're a good football team. How about Paul Brown, though? The Bengals are very close to being where he's wanted them all along.
Certainly can't ignore that. Chuck Noll, in the AFC West, John Madden and John Ralston. How about those two?
Well, that's true, and of course, Ralston's team was knocked out, but I don't think anybody thought they would go that far. How about Tom Landry, though, in Dallas? He turned them around when he needed to.
And George Allen, of course, Bud Grant, and Chuck Knox, of course. Who is the coach of the year, you think?
I would think it would be Mr. North with New Orleans. I don't think anybody came in under worse conditions and turned the team around. They played some real good football down there.
I like what you said about Don Shula. I'm going to pick him as the coach of the year. Okay. We'll see all the teams we've just been talking about and all the best action from all of last week's games. And what about our featured performer of the week, Tom?
Our featured performer of this week, or almost any other week, Pat, and therefore our featured performer of the year would have to be number 32, Renthal James Simpson of the Buffalo Bills.
From Pro Football's most heralded rookie 5 years ago to Pro Football's most heralded player today.
Last week against the Jets, 34 carries, 200 yards, and of course he went to 2,003 for a single season.
And that breaks Jim Brown's 10-year-old record by 40.
The Bills, of course, rushed pretty well overall. They had 314 yards against the Jets. The team got 3,098. I think that's a record.
Breaks Miami's record of last year by 136 yards.
Up front, it's Reggie McKenzie, Paul Seymour, Joe DeLamielleure,
Dave Foley, Donnie Green, and Mike Muntler. Reggie McKenzie says it's a fantastic feeling knowing you're part of sports history. The next guy who does it will understand what we went through.
All in all, the city of Washington, D.C. has gone through a pretty hairy year. And the second most troublesome question in town has been, what's wrong with Larry Brown and the Washington Redskin offense?
Last week, in the midst of a Washington snowstorm, the rah-rah Redskins jacked themselves up to go after their third straight playoff berth since the arrival of George Allen 3 years ago. To succeed, they had to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles and former Allen disciple Roman Gabriel, number 5. Nearing the end of a phenomenal first season in Philadelphia, Gabriel entered the game as the league's leading passer, and not surprisingly, he chose to attack the Redskins by going up top through the snowflakes. The targets he sought out were, to say the least, inviting. 6'7" Harold Carmichael continued to strike terror into the hearts of undersized cornerbacks. Then Gabriel honed in on 6'5" rookie sensation Charlie Young with another perfect spiral. Young's TD catch gave the Eagles a quick 10-point advantage. It left matters squarely up to the dead-end kids of the Redskin offense. Bill Kilmer, Larry Brown, and the Redskin offensive line had found rough sledding in '73 as they entered the game ranking 25th in the league in total rushing yardage. But now, with the season on the line, the ground-gobbling machine reappeared. The line tore open huge holes, and Larry Brown barreled through for his first 100-yard rushing day of the season. With the Eagle interior properly softened up, Kilmer faked up the middle, then screened outside to Brown, who ripped into the end zone from 27 yards out. Then even wild Bill Kilmer found his long-lost spiral as he connected with a pretty 32-yard toss to Roy Jefferson, number 80. A season's worth of frustration found its way to the surface against the crippled Eagle defense, and suddenly Washington could do no wrong. Kilmer lured in the rush, then dumped. Lynn Hoss and John Wilbur threw crushing blocks. And number 43 recaptured the raucous, robust style that made him MVP in 1972. For the day, Brown gained 150 yards rushing and 105 pass receiving. But Gabriel would not concede as he continued to put on the pressure. This time, big, mean Hoagie Carmichael terrorized tiny cornerback Pat Fisher, number 37. Carmichael's catch and carry set up another Philadelphia TD and closed a year of outstanding personal achievement for the Eagles. Awesome number 17 wound up as the league's leading receiver, Roman Gabriel as the top passer. But the Redskins captured the prize that mattered most, the right to go on. On this sugar-frosted Sunday, the Redskins vindicated themselves with 432 yards of total offense. Larry Brown went in untouched for a soul-satisfying 38-20 victory and a place in the NFC playoffs. In the past, George Allen's teams have seemed to peak too early in the season. This year, they may have peaked just in the nick of time.
Well, it might surprise some people, Pat, that the Dallas Cowboys are once again the champions of the NFC East.
No big surprise, though, Tom. I think the main reason is that down through the stretch, Tom Landry called all the plays for Roger Staubach. And that, added to overall talent, boosted Dallas into the playoffs for an unprecedented 8th straight year.
The Cowboys needed a victory over the St. Louis Cardinals to lock up the NFC's Eastern Championship for the 7th time in 8 seasons. In their last 10 quarters, the Doomsday defense had allowed but a single touchdown. And against a spoiler team like St. Louis, they proved the dominant force. The Cardinals employed a double tight end offense for the 2nd straight week, but Dallas linebackers, like 55 Leroy Jordan, shut down the run. Watch number 52, Dave Edwards, fill on the sweep, beat down the blocker, and tackle Jim Otis hard. While Doomsday throttled Cardinal runners, the Big Red defense tried to separate Roger Staubach from his senses. A quarterback like Staubach is fair game in the open field, and the hard-pursuing Cardinals hit him hard, often, and sometimes late. However, once Rogers' protection improved, he stayed at home and threw strikes. On the day, Staubach was 14 for 19 for 252 yards. His most dependable receiver was rookie Drew Pearson, number 88, whose 5 receptions netted him 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. A second look at Pearson's score reveals that Dallas sent both receivers to the left. With that zone flooded, Pearson easily beat single coverage on the right side by number 26, Dwayne Crump. The Cowboys lucked into a 20-3 lead when Staubach first bumped into blocker Calvin Hill, then threw into double coverage. When number 45, Jim Tolbert, slipped, Gene Fugit carried the ball, and Chuck Detweiler in for 6 points. Dallas drove for their final touchdown using the familiar Staubach to Pearson combination. By game's end, Dallas had amassed 450 yards in offense. Pearson had racked up his 2nd touchdown, and the Cowboys were once again champions of the NFC East.
little to gain and nothing to lose, the Packers and the Bears met last Sunday in Chicago for the 109th renewal of pro football's oldest rivalry. And it marked the end of a long and disappointing season for both teams.
Both clubs have had their ups and downs this season, but this time it was the Pack who was up to putting the Bears down. Number 76, Mike McCoy, led the Packer assault with 9 unassisted tackles as Green Bay shut out the Bears. Week before last, number 42, John Brockington, became the first player in NFL history to record 1,000-yard seasons in his first 3 years in the league. And last week against Chicago, a former Ohio State star exploded for 142 yards on 22 carries. This one going 53 and setting up a short Packer touchdown. Green Bay quarterback Jerry Tagge connected on only 3 passes all afternoon. However, 2 of them went for scores to number 22, John Staggers. The second Tagge to Staggers hookup covered 36 yards while giving the Packers their 5th win of the season in a 21-0 win over the NFC Central cellar dwellers, the Chicago Bears.
Last Sunday in New Haven, the New York Giants learned a lesson well known to 11 other clubs in the league. The lesson being that mistakes are out of the question if you want to beat the Purple Gang.
Well, that's for sure, Pat. And the Minnesota-type weather up there added to the Viking advantage. The result is a rather obvious win for the boys from the Black and Blue division.
It wasn't hard to see that it was just one of those days for the Giants as Viking bungles turned to bonuses. The only New York firepower came when it was too late to matter as Randy Johnson passed to ex-Viking Bob Grimm for 33 yards and the longest offensive play of the day. One play later, Johnson and Johnson combined as quarterback Randy hit running back Ron for the only Giant points for the afternoon. The Giants' tally mattered little as Fran Tarkenton had the Vikings in a comfortable lead during the first half, controlling the ball with the short passing game. Offensively, Minnesota chalked up a field goal and 3 short touchdowns, one by number 32, Oscar Reed. But once again, it was a great day for the Big Purple defensive unit. Bobby Bryant was credited with a blocked field goal as the Vikings kept New York in check most of the afternoon, rising to stop the Giants on 3 different occasions with 4th down in a matter of inches. Number 24, Terry Brown, personally silenced 1 4th down threat, returning an interception 63 yards for a touchdown and bringing the final score to 31-7 in favor of the Minnesota Vikings.
In Atlanta last Sunday, it wasn't snowing, but it was cold and gloomy. Perhaps that was an appropriate setting for the season's finale between the New Orleans Saints and that mysterious team most people thought to be a shoo-in for the playoffs just a few weeks ago.
In the opener, the Saints made the errors and the Falcons made the points, 62 of them. Last Sunday, it looked like history might repeat itself when Dwayne Benson smothered punter Steve O'Neill and quarterback Bob Lee twice set up Atlanta touchdowns with his passing. Leading 14-0 and with encouraging news from out of town, the Falcons appeared to be sitting pretty. But the Saints stopped making mistakes, and they also stopped the Falcons from further point making. When the Atlanta offense broke down, the New Orleans offense took over as number 12, second-year quarterback Bobby Scott from Tennessee took the Saints to a score when he scrambled until he found Bob Newland in the end zone. (14-10) was as close as the Saints could come, and the rest of the day was a battle between Dave Hampton and the 1,000-yard Barry. Hampton carried 27 times for 84 yards, but the Saints knew he was coming, and they stopped him just 3 yards short of the magic number when, after 6 consecutive carries, Hampton failed to convert a fourth down run into a first down at the New Orleans 9-yard line. For the second straight year, Hampton was less than 5 yards short of 1,000, and his team, with a 9-5 record this time, was just 1 game short of the playoffs.
With a lock on the NFC's Western title and an 11-2 record, Pat, there really wasn't any reason for the Los Angeles Rams not to relax in the glow of the California sunshine.
But as you know, Tom, good teams just plain hate to lose. And so the Rams came out and played the Cleveland Browns just like it was the first week of the season.
While much of the nation was tucked under a fat blanket of snow, Southern Californians enjoyed another golden day, happy in the thought that this final Sunday of the regular season was purely for the fun of it. A day for brass bands and celebration, because the beloved Los Angeles Rams, division winners in the NFC West, had absolutely nothing to lose. But the Cleveland Browns, with still a slim chance for the playoffs, kept one eye on the scoreboard and prayed that Greg Pruitt could do it one more time. And in fact, the rookie game breaker broke this punt return the first time he laid hands on the football. But as a harbinger of the way it was to be for the Browns this afternoon, Pruitt's effort was voided by a clipping penalty. Late in the first quarter, John Hadel found Bob Klein on a quick look-in. Klein collapsed Tom Darden's attempted tackle and lumbered 23 yards for the game's first touchdown, giving the Rams a 13-0 advantage. But with the quarter almost expired, Mike Phipps found running room and turned on the speed to narrow the Rams' lead to 13-7. John Hadel countered by going immediately up top, looking for lightning-fast Harold Jackson and finding him for a 34-yard gain to the Browns' 6-yard line. 3 plays later, the score was Rams 20, Browns 7, when Hadel found fast Harold carelessly attended in the end zone. Having flashed the quick-striking might of their air game, L.A. then featured their sure-footed infantry. And on this drive, Los Angeles had a single-season record for rushing attempts, breaking the old mark of 632 set in 1934 by the Detroit Lions. With less than 2 minutes remaining in the half, Tony Baker smashed across to give the Rams a comfortable 27-10 lead. The Browns had only one more moment in the California sun when Mike Phipps hooked up with Frank Pitts on his 14-yard touchdown pass, making the score Cleveland 17, Los Angeles 30. But for the rest of the second half, power defense with interceptions like this one by number 47 Charlie Stoops stifled the Browns' attack. And on a Sunday, when the playoff-bound Rams might have relaxed and taken an afternoon off, the Rams showed that winning has become a habit under new head coach Chuck Knox. For the Cleveland Browns, this 30-17 loss in Los Angeles was a disappointment, but not discouraging, for clearly next fall will dawn brightly for the youthful Browns.
This week, the Cincinnati Bengals take on the Miami Dolphins in the opening round of the playoffs, and the spotlight will be on all of Paul Brown's amazing young team. But on defense, none will be watched more closely than all-pro defensive tackle Mike Reed, one of the most amazing young men in pro football, for he is just as much at home preparing his own piano composition for a symphony orchestra.
There did come a time several months back when I realized my hands were damaged or bruised, let's say, to the point that I couldn't play. And of course, this brought to mind many things. What if the day would come that I would get the serious injury that would force me from the piano altogether? Certainly, if this day comes, it'll be a difficult thing to cope with, but I'm leaning more towards composing, more towards writing music. I enjoy that sort of thing. I enjoy trying to express something that you feel. If it would ever come, I could reconcile this by just sitting down and then concentrating my efforts on just composing.
And it is his own composition that Mike plays in his debut with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Reed.
Mike's composition speaks of a sensitivity one might not expect in a gut-tough defender from the world of pro football.
I think probably any human being who is aware of life itself wonders why he's here. And eventually we realize the one thing that you strive for in anything you do is happiness. But it just so happens that music and football give me the happiness, give me the inner tranquility that I search for.
There was a time when a season-ending matchup of the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Diego Chargers would decide a division title, Pat.
That's right, Tom, but this year there was some speculation that both squads might choose to be included in the list of no-shows.
Last Sunday, over 35,000 ticket holders failed to file into Kansas City's Arrowhead Stadium. And the only positive aspect of this depressing statistic seemed to be that those who did show had a much easier time getting to their seats. For the Kansas City faithful who had hung in from the beginning, only a dim memory remained of the good old AFL days when the Chiefs and Chargers were contenders instead of also-rans, just playing out the string. Lack of incentive and bone-chilling 22-degree temperatures produced some loose ball handling on both sides, as neither team seemed willing to accept the offered advantage. But finally the Chiefs came to their senses and began to pick off the Charger prayers. Number 15, Kerry Reardon, pulled off one of 4 Chief interceptions, and middle linebacker Willie Lanier, number 63, policed up 2 Charger fumbles as the season-long string of San Diego turnovers continued, unabated through the 14th and final game. Kansas City made their California cousins pay for their sloppy approach to the game with 4 Jan Stenerud field goals and a field day by a seldom-used bench warmer named Jeff Kinney, number 31. Kinney accounted for 56 total yards on the first Kansas City touchdown drive, then scooted home from the 5. Number 38, Wendell Hayes, capped the 33-6 trouncing with a blast from the 2. In a final, meaningless game, the Chiefs had hit their highest point total of the season, providing a little belated excitement for the sturdy diehards who had stuck to the bitter end, and just maybe a spark of hope for the future.
San Francisco quarterback John Brody made the final appearance of a brilliant 17-season pro career last week as he led the 49ers against the brash young Pittsburgh Steelers.
In his final appearance as a 49er, John Brody received the starting nod from head coach Dick Nolan. Now 38 years old, the former most valuable player was suffering from an ailing arm, which forced him to work the short routes early against the Steelers. However, Brody's arm betrayed him twice in the first half as 2 interceptions halted promising drives while giving Pittsburgh the early lead. The interception and return of 71 yards for a touchdown by number 48, John Rouser, lifted the Steelers to a 7-0 advantage. But the 49ers matched the score as Wyndon Hall blocked the punt, recovering it for the tie. After Brody removed himself from the game, San Francisco quarterbacks fell victim to the wild fury of number 68, L.C. Greenwood. Watch Greenwood combine with number 78, Dwight White, to drop Steve Spurrier as Pittsburgh all but stopped the 49er offense cold. Offensively, Terry Bradshaw hit on 8 passes for 135 yards as the Steelers moved to 3 short touchdowns and 3 Roy Gerela field goals. Bradshaw's only touchdown pass came on a perfect strike of 50 yards to Frank Lewis, who beat Bruce Taylor on the post. Pittsburgh wound up winning big, 37-14 over the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, Pat, the Cincinnati Bengals finished their regular season last week against the Houston Oilers. And for Cincinnati, Booby Clark needed only 69 yards, and Essex Johnson only 34 for the Bengals to have 2 1,000-yard rushers in the same backfield.
But you know, it's Paul Brown's theory that statistics are no substitute for victories, even though all he could win this week was a date with the world champion Miami Dolphins.
Beginning the season, Paul Brown predicted that his Cincinnati Bengals were ready to make the big step from respectability to excellence. But all year long, the Bengals seemed to be on the verge of a mediocre season. But now, having taken 2 steps forward after each setback, Browns Bengals needed just one more victory to recast the coach in his accustomed role of genius. And with the Houston Oilers the only remaining obstacle, the Bengals' second division title in the tough AFC Central seemed assured. But from the beginning, it was apparent that the lowly Oilers intended to make this afternoon a memorable one for Paul Brown and the Bengals. The Houston defense turned truculent and stopped both Boobie Clark and Essex Johnson short of their 1,000-yard seasons. And by the end of the first quarter, the Bengals could manage only a 3-0 advantage on an 11-yard field goal by Horace Smallman, set up by this Houston fumble, which was eventually controlled by Cincinnati's Jim LeClair. Late in the quarter, ex-Bengal running back Fred Willis, number 44, turned on the Houston attack with this 25-yard rush. And beginning the second period, Willis covered his own fumble in the Bengals' end zone, and the score read Houston 7, Cincinnati 3. But the newest ingredient in the Bengals' offensive arsenal, the bomb to Isaac Curtis, quickly put Cincinnati back on top 10-7. It has, in fact, been the bomb to the long-striding rookie Isaac Curtis, which has carried Cincinnati through the final weeks of the season to the doorstep of the playoffs. And remembering the Otto Graham era, it is not surprising that the conservative Paul Brown has found the big play in time to spark the Cincinnati attack. Beginning the second half, Ken Anderson found his tight end Bob Trumpy for this 10-yard touchdown, making the score 20-10. And the Bengals appeared to have quelled the Oilers' hopes for the upset. And this spectacular by Isaac Curtis appeared to be just icing on the cake, wrapping up AFC Rookie of the Year laurels for Curtis as well as AFC Central honors for the Bengals. But at the top of the last quarter, Dante Pastorini threw the Oilers' offense into high gear. Sparked by the determined runs of Fred Willis and number 18 Paul Robinson, another ex-Cincinnati ball carrier, the Oilers drove for 2 touchdowns, making the score Cincinnati 27, Houston 24. But the Oilers' rally only served to make the game interesting as Cincinnati held on to their 27-24 advantage, making Paul Brown's preseason prediction come true.
In weather more suited for abominable snowmen than for football players, the Colts and the Patriots frolicked in a blizzard last Sunday over in Baltimore.
It was the kind of day that you stick your hands into an opponent's face mask to keep them warm. It was a day of soft landings on the snowy down, but also a day of frozen fingers and fumbles. For the Baltimore Colts, often the safest play was an old-fashioned quarterback keeper by Marty Domrese. Baltimore gained a 9-0 lead on a field goal and a Domrese touchdown pass to Cotton Spirer. Often the well-conceived plans of Jim Plunkett and the Patriots fell astride too long. But the resourceful Plunkett hung in there, and Randy Bataha stem-christied in for a touchdown. Trailing 9-7, New England took the lead on Plunkett's zone-splitting pass to snowflake-sized Mac Heron, number 42, a 5-foot 5-inch running back. In the final period, Baltimore marched to the decisive score on the legs of Lydell Mitchell, who gained 142 yards and broke Alan Amici's club rushing record for a season. A Patriot blitz opened up a passing lane for tight end Tom Mitchell, and Dumrays found him alone at the flag. The Patriots' last-ditch heroics ended in a snowdrift when Plunkett fumbled and the Colts recovered to preserve a hard-won 18-13 victory.
Well, Pat, 2 weeks ago, the Miami Dolphins suffered a defeat at the hands of the Colts, and that cost them a great deal more than just their pride, as no less than 5 regulars sustained serious injuries.
After that Baltimore letdown, Coach Shula attributed the injuries to flat performances. And last week against the Detroit Lions, while there certainly didn't appear to be any individual letdowns, the injury list gained catastrophic dimensions. And in the Darwinian struggle of the playoffs, that could spell big trouble for the Dolphins.
All-pro safety Jake Scott got some badly bruised ribs, as did tight end Jim Mandich. And when substitute Lloyd Mumford got a knee, the Dolphins were down to third string at corner. Nevertheless, the Aqua and Orange seemed awesome as always. It's hard to fill Nick Bonaconte's shoes, but substitute Bob Matheson had a standout day, inspired by the two-fisted play of the Dolphin regulars. Number 57, linebacker Mike Colon, put a lick on Steve Owens he won't soon forget. And in general, the injury-rigged Dolphin defense worked well enough to shut out the Lions until late in the fourth quarter with some good old-fashioned football. Even more impressive, however, was the display the Miami offense put forth. Despite injuries to key interior linemen, the Dolphins blocked like they were trying to gain financial security for Jim Ketch. With holds like that, it was Mercury Morris's fate to sit on the bench to save himself for the playoffs. And with only 46 yards separating him from another 1,000-yard season, that had to have been a fairly agonizing sacrifice. One guy that wasn't disappointed, however, was Larry Zonka, who for the third time in consecutive seasons bulldozed for over 1,000 yards. Quarterback Bob Greasy performed brilliantly for the afternoon, calling plays well and throwing 11 for 15, including this strike to Jim Mandich, who put a matador-like move on safety Mike Weegar before being hurled down by number 20 Lim Barney. But the real story of the afternoon was the record-passing combination of Bob Greasy to super receiver Paul Warfield. Warfield's fumble was recovered by number 86 Marlon Briscoe. But that was the only measure of his fallibility, because during the 30 minutes that he played, he was nothing short of invincible. In all, Warfield caught 4 touchdown passes, one short of the NFL single-game record that has stood since 1950. The first came on the initial Dolphin possession with a perfect strike from Bob Greasy. The 10-year master of reception was certainly no match for rookie cornerback Levi Johnson. And a repeat shows that number 23 is learning his trade the embarrassing way. 3 times Johnson was caught with his Levi's down, as it were, and each time number 42 kept a foot in for the score. Then Detroit put 9-year veteran Miller Farr in Johnson's place, and Warfield never noticed the switch. With this point explosion, Warfield became the leading scorer by reception in the AFC. But unless the Dolphins are healed up for the playoffs, their super dream may stay just that.
Despite all their injuries, Don Shula's Dolphins look pretty strong to me. But last week, the headlines in the AFC East belonged to another man and another team, Tom.
As they say, Pat, Miami has the oranges and Buffalo has the juice. Last week, New York's Shea Stadium had not only a large order of chilled orange juice, but a slice of history as well.
Last Sunday was Weeb Eubank's final game as an NFL head coach, and his New York Jets were prepared to give the old mentor a proper send-off with Joe Namath, the master of ceremony. Number 83, Jerome Barkham, had the Jets on the scoreboard early with a 48-yard touchdown. But the next New York score didn't come about until the closing seconds of the game when Namath found Rich Castor in the same corner of the field. Castor's score didn't mean much because those upstate upstarts, the Buffalo Bills, had long since taken control of the game. One spectacular score was turned in by rookie safety man Bill Cahill, number 22. Number 22 had his moment, but the man of the hour, the week, and the year was number 32, the man they call the Juice. On this 30-yard gain early in the game, O.J. Simpson became one of the very few players ever to rush for 5,000 yards in his first 5 pro seasons. On this 6-yard gain midway in the first quarter, Simpson broke Jim Brown's 10-year-old season rushing record of 1,863 yards. Then, midway in the fourth period on this 7-yard gain, O.J. Simpson broke the barrier many thought would never be attained, 2,000 yards rushing in a single season. O.J. put on quite a show last week and all season long. And as we said in our feature at the beginning of the show, who else could be our featured performer, not only of the week, but of the year? As Jets defensive back Phil Wise stated after last Sunday's game, he just used me up. You know how a streetcar conductor punches your ticket? Well, he just punched my ticket and waved to me from the end zone. He lets you stay with him for a while, then he cuts and he's gone. He's like a flim-flam man. All my life, I thought Jim Brown was the greatest runner ever, but O.J. broke his record. I don't see how anyone could be better, not even Jim Brown.
Well, it's all over in predictions, right? But I'm looking for the number 1 draft next.
Well, I admire you. You never quit.
Okay. How about Cincinnati at Miami, a big playoff game?
Well, I saw the Dolphins last week, Tom. They look awfully tough. In spite of the injuries, I'll pick Don Shula's team.
I'm going to go for the Bengals to pull the upset.
How about Los Angeles at Dallas? What do you think?
Well, I've got to believe Dallas is coming on strong. I'll go with the Cowboys.
I sort of like the Cowboys, too. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you all the best action from all 4 of this week's playoff games. I'm Pat Summerall.
And I'm Tom Brookshire, and have a happy holiday, and we'll see you next week.